Hey, what's up, you guys? It's IAmTheLionRider, and welcome back to Sandstone Valley. And more importantly, welcome back to another episode of Nick Rambles for 20 minutes, and you watch a slightly sped up version of him building and probably messing up a bunch. But yeah, so today, this is episode 3 of Sandstone Valley, and we are working on the Microraptor Aviary. So the aviary was very heavily inspired by the Jurassic Park 3 pterodactyl enclosure. So, very similar to that design. It's nearly, I mean, it's a smaller version, but you can definitely tell the inspiration is there once the build gets going. So the first thing that I needed to do was create a dome. So I'm sure no one's seen a dome before in this game. Yeah, domes are probably one of the easiest things to make with, in general when it comes to these building games. Everyone knows the techniques of, you build like one little sliver of it and then you copy it around a bunch and eventually get it. Now, I will admit, I messed this up a bunch. I don't know why I just wasn't getting the dome shape correctly. Like the curve just wasn't working. So if you actually watch, you'll probably see a bunch of, messes essentially. Like I just mess up a ton of times. Um, so it's definitely not the best, if you're looking for the highest precision level with this build. Definitely didn't get it with this particular build. But I am definitely enjoying Prehistoric Kingdom more the more I play it. The more I'm getting used to the controls, the more I'm, learning how to use the pieces effectively, the more I'm definitely like seeing where this game can go, and I'm just getting more and more excited about the future of the game because I really enjoy this game, and I can't stress that enough. This is a really fun game, and I know for a lot of you it's going to be kind of difficult because the early access isn't available anymore. So if you want it, or well, the early access will be available, but early access to the early access via the alpha or beta will not be available for purchase anymore. You'd have to wait until Q3 for the official early access release, which is going to include like the 22 dinosaurs and some more basic functionality and stuff. But take my word for it, this is going to be a game that, if it's not already on your radar, please try to consider it, because I know for a lot of people, if you're not too into dinosaurs or something, especially in my audience, a lot of you come from Planet Zoo, of course. I was definitely in that same camp, but trust me when I say the simple things like scaling and stuff really do make the world of difference. It's insane how it can make the stress of building not that bad. So as you can see, I'm kind of getting like, annoyed that like I'm not getting this dome shape right, but it's really not all that bad. Like I felt like, oh well, I have all these, I had little issues the whole time, but like just by doing little things like scaling and stuff, I was able to kind of circumvent those issues, and that's really nice for like a creator. If you're someone who's into building, you're really going to enjoy Prehistoric Kingdom. So I think eventually, I think I'm close, but not quite, at the final dome, which I should have even admit. Even in the final product of the dome, which you get in a minute, I messed that up significantly. I don't know how, but like I tilted the entire building at an angle. So what you'll see me do to try and kind of get over that is I basically kind of try to like level the terrain a little bit around it so that the entire aviary looks level, even though it's not. And I should probably mention that as well. If there is one annoying little nitpick with PK right now, it's the fact that there isn't technically a what's it called? There isn't a undo button yet. So if you mess up, there's really no going back. You just messed up. You have to either redo it or not. So as you can see here, I'm just doing my dome technique, and I'm like, oh, that looks pretty good. But as you can see, parts of the dome are slightly, ever so slightly at the bottom, raised a little bit higher than the rest of the dome. So this is what I was talking about. I just kind of raised the terrain around that just to be like, yep, that's not an issue. I'm getting around that. So, and it really does, work out in the end because it actually kind of makes it look a little bit more realistic in truth because it does have that kind of slight elevation difference, even if it's not monumental or anything. And in the end, again, I didn't really care because I knew that once inside of the aviary, I was going to be digging straight down. I was going to be basically making a mini canyon essentially inside of the aviary. So you can see me doing that here. I'm just basically closing down the entire aviary so that it's basically very similar to Jurassic Park 3. So if anyone has seen that movie, the pterodactyl cage is a cage from the top, but then it kind of dips into the ground significantly until it's a whole canyon. So it's actually quite elevated off the ground. And by doing that, that's sort of what I tried here is the actual base level is surrounded with kind of a standard aviary cage, but then inside there's going to be elevated platforms made out of chain link that I get to later. That was actually a technique that was used by my good buddy Leaf. So Leaf was the one that actually showed that to me. I think maybe by the time this goes out, he will have his video and it can kind of make out where I got that inspiration. But it was very, very similar to that technique. I just kind of took it one step further and did the whole aviary. He just kind of did a little idea to see if the guests would use it. And the guests do use it because I tried it out. So that is really, really nice. But what I will say is, like, I do really like just kind of messing around with the rocks and stuff in this game as well. I know I've mentioned this a ton of times, and probably everyone's getting sick of it if you've been following Sandstone Valley. The rocks in this game are so good. They look great no matter what, and you can just mess around scaling and stuff and build essentially just giant canyon walls super quickly. Like you can see right here. If I was to do this in Planet Zoo, and I've had similar builds recently where in Planet Zoo I'm like, yeah, that would be great if I could just get the PK rocks, because it is so tedious and like painstaking to place little rocks one at a time. So the fact that you can just scale these large, basically like rock formations is so useful, and it just is so nice. And I can't stress enough how much I love the rocks in this game. It is easily the best part. So, basically, that's all I do. Like I said, I just surround the entire area with rocks. And this is where I was trying to figure out how to get the aviaries to work. So, my technique to get this to be a functional aviary is to essentially sprinkle a bunch of little aviaries all throughout the entire build. So what I do is I take a bunch of mini aviaries, make them null so that you're only able to see the trees essentially, and then just kind of cover all of them up with rocks. So that way it looks like the birds are flying around the aviary, but technically they're all tied to their individual little trees, which in truth isn't really that big of a deal, because if you spam enough little aviaries around, it does eventually look like, oh, they're just flying in between the trees and stuff because you have birds flying around. So that is kind of a cool technique. So I know a lot of people are just kind of taking the little box aviaries that the game provides, but you can definitely like expand out. If you want like a really big aviary like I have, you can certainly do that. All you have to do is just spam a bunch of aviaries really close to each other, and then that's it. And the other thing is, as you can see, as I place down aviaries, it kind of creates a hill for a second, but the good news is you can literally just get rid of that hill immediately after you place them down, and then what you're left with is essentially what you want, which is just the floating trees that you can then place your rocks down over. So like right there as an example, I placed down the thing, I have my little floating trees now, so now all I have to do is go into the rock tab, and then boom, there you go. I just literally scaled down a little rock or whatever, and then place that on the tree, and then there you go. Now it's no longer a floating tree, and now the birds can fly over that specific area. And I basically just kind of do this all around the map. I just keep adding little aviaries everywhere. I think I ended with 7 in total in the entire thing. and I kind of sprinkled them out through different areas so that it didn't look like the birds were all circling in one specific area. They're all kind of spread out. They're all at different elevations a little bit too. That way the birds are not all, again, looking like they're at the same level. And I think that works out really well. Like I said, some of the placement of stuff is a little bit difficult, but for the most part, it works out rather well, I'd say. So now we are getting to what I was talking about earlier, which are the actual elevated paths. Actually, wait, never mind. We're not at the elevated paths. I do a quick foliage pass. It was very quick, though. I literally just sprinkled down a couple of little greenery just because the rocks were nice, but I feel like it needed to be a little bit more lush. So I added a couple of little sprinkles of trees and stuff to the actual base of this area just so that it didn't look completely, too gray or anything. So I also add in a little bit of water at the bottom just because, again, very much inspired by Jurassic Park 3. So at the bottom, there was always that. But this is what I was talking about. Now we are at the actual elevated platforms. So this was a technique I want to give Leaf all the credit. He basically invented this. I totally ripped him off. I will wholeheartedly admit I ripped him off entirely. But what he did was he took the new chain link pieces that were available in the Alpha 1.1 update, and he essentially just scaled them down into little cubes. It's like a little chain link cube that you can just kind of use as a modular piece. And so all you see here is I have my little box, essentially. So I have a little chain link box, and then I turn that into a chain link cube in a second. So if you actually look, there's my square, and then I just raise that up and then add my walls, and then all I'm doing is making a chain link cube. So you want it hollow on two sides, and then that's it. So now you can use the in-game scaling to just scale it to whatever size you want, and then you use it literally like a Lego brick. You just kind of paste it around however you want, and you can basically just make these kind of chain link cages, which are very similar to, like I said, in Jurassic Park 3. The pterodactyl habitat has this exact same thing. And so I kind of took it a little bit of a step further. I also kind of rotated a little bit so that you get some elevation difference. It kind of looks a little more janky or like I guess dangerous looking or something, and you can just kind of go through it and basically see the birds and stuff as they were intended to be. So I just kind of go around, and I'm not really even going with any rhyme or reason. I'm just kind of placing them down. However, I got to this point, and then I was like, that's a solid, cutoff point, I'd say, for a dead end. But I also want to add in another elevation level. So I just move that rock out of the way so that it's not clipping. But then I kind of choose, maybe like halfway through, I wanted a second elevation level. So what I do is I basically pick out the area that I want to go up, and I wanted to kind of circle around this large rock formation in the center of the aviary. And I basically just cut a hole out, and then literally just kind of copied and pasted another aviary. And then I literally just kind of go around just a little bit the way I have, and then just go up, and then now I start rotating upward. So now we're going up a little bit. Now, I will say this is not handicap accessible, probably. Though I guess it could be, because it's technically a ramp, so, I mean, it's not like a staircase or anything. But definitely not for the faint of heart. It's not meant to be like something that looks like, oh yeah, that's a well put together aviary structure. I'd be one of those people that'd be like, yeah, I'd go on that, but I know like Julie or something would be like, are you crazy? That's a death trap. And that was sort of what I was going for. I wanted to go for like that kind of thrill seekers would definitely be lining up to go to this Microraptor Aviary, but a lot of people would be like, yeah, I'm willing to skip it. I'd rather just hang out with the normal dinosaurs. Though I will say my entire park is a liability to begin with. The bridge over the Tarbosaurus is extremely dangerous. People fall out, fall into the canyon with the Tarbosaurus all the time. The Edmontosaurus could absolutely just like rampage through the tiny fence that's holding them in. And yeah, so now the Microraptor Aviary also being not the most up to code building either makes a lot of sense. I think it's just par for the course that, you know, this park, Sandstone Valley, is just kind of a rickety mess. But I guess that is a good segue into the next section, which is the kind of nice looking entrance. So, as much as I like the really rustic and kind of jankiness of the inside, I did make the outside of the aviary a lot more presentable. It's a lot nicer looking. There's a little, you know, elevated, or I get not elevated, but terraced entryway. You have a nice sign. There's some wood and pillars, and later in the video, you see me working on some nice little greenery and palm trees and benches and stuff. So I definitely made it like a nice functional park, but it's just funny how like janky the inside of the aviary is versus the outside, which makes it look very, very nice looking. So another thing that I love about this game is the ability to scale allows you to essentially just take the in-game font pieces and make as small or as large of a font as you want. So it's not like, you know, you can just type out a message like in Planet Zoo signs, but if you had the patience and wanted to write a giant essay or a paragraph or a lorem ipsum or whatever, you could hypothetically do that. There's nothing stopping you. The text in-game, the font has no maximum or minimum scale. You can just keep scaling them down to literally oblivion if you want. So I've seen people like go really crazy with the tiny fonts in the signs. So that's really, really cool. And once we get FlexiColor, that is going to be game over. Like I said, like we're going to be able to just make whatever we want sign-wise. You're going to get amazing looking mosaics and stuff, and crazy in-depth T-Rex dioramas and stuff. It'll be really cool once we get that FlexiColor online, because I'm really excited for that myself. But as you can see here, because we're kind of wrapping up the video, the last thing I wanted to do was basically just kind of round out the outside a little bit, leading up to the aviary. Because right now it was a bit barren, so I wanted to make it a little bit more presentable. So what I ended up doing was I wanted a tiny little plaza right outside, and then I actually used the mulch pieces because I actually wanted like some little flower beds, essentially. So I love the mulch in the game. It uses world space textures, so they don't stretch. So no matter how big you scale the mulch, it's always going to be looking seamless, which is really awesome. And then I just added some palm trees because I just wanted a nice little lush area leading up to the aviary entrance. And what's funny is towards the end of this video, you see all of my guests, they want to climb all over the area that I've clearly marked off to, like, don't step on, but that's the only area they want to, like, climb through. They want to only climb on the rocks. They only want to climb through the grass and the foliage, but meanwhile, the pathways that I have that are left empty purposely, yeah, they ignore those entirely. But as you can see, like, you know, the guests definitely like can climb over into the aviary and stuff. You see some of them going inside and stuff. And I do like that about the guest AI, is they can go literally anywhere as long as you kind of put points of interest over there. They'll all try. They'll decide, and as you can see, not many people want to go in the aviary, but they hypothetically could. So, I guess the last thing I wanted to mention was just that I was using some of the rocks as kind of guards around the foliage. So, I thought it was just a nice little touch. I know a lot of people will use, like, plaster or concrete or something, but I thought, like, honestly, for this park, it's kind of like a rustic dinosaur park, so the rocks work really, really well to kind of frame some of these areas of greenery and stuff. But with that being said, that essentially wraps up this episode of Sandstone Valley. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the Microraptor Aviary. I hope you guys have been enjoying this series. I've been having a ton of fun playing it myself. And past that, again, let me know what dinosaur... I'm probably going to get to all the dinosaurs that are in the alpha, I'm not going to lie. But let me know what I should do next. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you next time.